it had its ups and downs. I know that I read not so long ago that between the years of 1929 and 1931, there's around 200 to 250,000 teenagers that were riding the rails. It was in a DVD that I read about a documentary. But anyway, there wasn't just men. It wasn't just boys. I say boys because they weren't men. They were like me. They were kids. There were some girls who were out there too. I remember there's a couple of girls I met down in Kansas, and they were in a hobo jungle, and the two of them had left their hometown of Marion, Ohio. I remember the town Marion because that was my mother's name, and they just hit the road. They just wanted a little adventure, and they took off. And one of the two girls had met a cowboy, and he was headed out to Wyoming, and she was going to go along with him. She wanted the other girl to go with her, and she said, "No, I'm going home." At least that's what she told me later on around the fire. She said, "No, I don't want any part of that cowboy stuff. I'm going to go back home to Ohio." And I know she went back home to Ohio because I was going through Marion, Ohio, about 5 years later, something like that, and I stopped and I looked her up. I remembered her name, and I checked around. I found out where she was living, went and knocked on her door, and she had gone back to Marion. She'd gone to high school, graduated, met a nice guy, got married. She had two little girls, and they invited me to eat with them. But even more important than that, they invited me to take a bath, and I hadn't had a bath in about 4 years. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't wash up, because when you're riding the rails, there's not a lot of bathtubs around here. But you took a bath in a stream or a lake or a river or something like that. That's the way you took a bath. You get in, what I'd do is I'd get in the water and I'd kind of move my clothes around, then I'd take them off and rub them together. And then if I had a lot of time and there wasn't anybody around, I'd hang them on a tree and I'd lay on the bank until they and me dry. If there were people around and it wasn't real private, I just put the clothes back on and walk them dry. Now, I never walk my shoes or my stockings dry. You don't want to walk around in wet shoes or wet stockings. But that was a real thrill, getting a bath at that time. And I got to sit down, got to eat at a sit-down table. That didn't happen too often either. So there was a lot of nice things that happened while I was on the radio. Or on the rails. I remember one time we were in a town up in Wyoming, and now when the hobos get their mulligan stew, everybody has to contribute to it. And either go into town and steal something or beg something or something like that, or you find a farm and take something out of the field. But anyway, you have to contribute something to the mulligan stew. Well, up in Wyoming on that particular day, there's two guys that came back with a crate of chickens. And they'd stolen them from a railroad station where the chickens were going, I don't know, not don't know where. But we had a great feast that night. The next day, one of the guys came back to the jungle and said, "You know what those chickens were?" No, I don't know what the chickens were. He said they were prize leghorns. They were on their way out to California, and they were worth about $50,000. So that has got to be one of the most expensive meals I've ever had. We left that jungle in a hurry. We hopped our freight and went out of there, and I never went back to that town. But as I say, there were some good points and there were some bad points. But after a while, you get kind of tired of riding on the rails, and if you want to, in my case, I kind of thought I'd like to go home. And but going home was kind of tough too, because I was mad at my mother and dad when I left, and I hadn't written them or talked to them or phoned them or anything, and geez, almost 8, 9 years. But I decided, what the heck, I'm going to go home. So I went home, and they accepted me back. I got home about in I think 1940, which is about 10 years after I left. So I was on the rails, or riding the rails for about 10 years. I got back in 1940, and I got a job, and I still lived with my parents for a while. They were back doing okay. But I lived with my parents for a while, and then the war started, as you all probably know. And I, like a lot of people my age, I was about 25 at the time, we went off to war. And got out, didn't get injured. I was at Normandy, and I went all the way across Europe. Never got hit by anything, which is kind of amazing, I guess, because there's a lot of people who were hit. But came back home, and I met a nice lady, and we got married, and I've got a couple kids. I've got 2 kids and about 3 grandkids, and it's been a pretty good life. I walked down the tracks, got my life on my back. It's been a long road, touch going home. I wanna go home. I left my home in Tennessee, in a boxcar, the world to see. I saw it all, streams, mountains, below. But I don't wanna ride the rails no more. I walk down the track, got my life on my back. It's been a long road, that's growing old. I wanna go home. I wasn't alone, but still I won't pretend that there was anyone that I could call a friend. We shared the fire, we shared the boiling stew, but there was no one that I could say I really knew. I walked down the track, got my life on my back. It's been a long road, bus growing old. I wanna go home. One day a thought of home crossed my mind. I wondered what a trip back there would find. I'm afraid those bridges long ago have burned. Those pages of my early life have turned. I walked down the track, got my life on my back. It's been a long road, bus growing old. I wanna go home, but still my home never called me. So I'll return to see what I can see. I